The school bell in the old high school rung like it does every night at 12, but nobody knows who rings it, nobody knows why either. Some say that the bells are rung to call all the spirits to the school, and that might just be part of an urban legend. I don't know why the bell rings, but I do know who or what it is that's ringing it. But to be honest, I wish I didn't know. I wish I was just like everybody else who was left to wonder every night at 12 who was ringing that damn bell. The school shut down in 1992 after a series of mysterious deaths took place inside the school. Some people in the town believe that it was haunted by the spirits of the teens who were killed in the school back in 1972. Some say they've heard whispers as they walked by, and some say they've seen people staring at them through the windows. Nobody was ever brave enough to spend over an hour in the school. The longest anybody had ever spent was 45 minutes, and that was during daylight. But myself and my partner, Charlie, had agreed to spend an entire night in the school for our web show, Ghost Seekers. We came all the way from Australia and arrived at the school at 11:30 just before midnight. We gathered all of our equipment, flashlights, cameras, and everything else we used for our ghost seeking. We entered the building kicking the pile of empty bottles and soda cans on the way. I was up for the challenge, but deep down inside, I was secretly afraid, and I know that Charlie was as well. I wish we knew what we were getting into. "Hello!" Charlie yelled, his voice echoing throughout the school. We had our camera on record and our flashlights in our right hands as we walked through the halls of the abandoned school. Everything was calm for the first 15 minutes until we heard the sound of a locker closing. The sound echoed throughout the building. Every sound pretty much had an echo to it. We decided to follow the sound down the hall where the old gym was. According to our research, 8 students were killed in the gym, and we thought that would be a great place to start. When we entered the gym, we could immediately feel that something was in there. We didn't need our EMF to be sure. The air was cold and the sound from our walkie-talkies were nothing but static. Something was interfering with the signal. We at least had some light from the moon that shined through the large windows, so it wasn't completely dark. As we were walking through the gym, the bell in the bell tower went off. It must have been midnight. I saw the bell tower through the gym windows, and at the time I thought maybe I was imagining things because I saw someone up there. It was a silhouette of what appeared to be a man. I shook it off and continued what I was doing. Despite the obvious fact of a presence, we weren't getting much activity in the gym. No whispers, no footsteps, nothing. It wasn't until we were heading out that something happened. A basketball suddenly came rolling towards us from the back of the room, an area where the light wasn't shining. It was an old dusty ball, and I admit that it had me feeling really uneasy about the situation. I was a veteran at ghost hunting, but I had never experienced something like that. It wasn't much though compared to what happened next. We were walking through the halls of the second floor when I noticed something weird about one of the rooms. I looked through the rectangular glass and I noticed a TV was on. It was strange because there was no power in the school. As I continued looking, I was startled by a sudden darkness that covered my view. It was just completely dark, as if someone or something were blocking it off. "Hey, mate," I said to Charlie. "There was something in there." "No way there is," Charlie said before looking through the glass himself. We were both shocked, and the reason for that was because we never actually saw a fear before. All we ever saw were dark shadows in the footage that we caught. But this wasn't a shadow, this was something more sinister. According to our research, this was the room where the killer shot himself. He was dressed in all black. When I looked back inside the room, the TV was off and whoever was standing in front of the door was gone. It was standing there for over a minute, and I was honestly ready to make a run for the door, but Charlie kept me from doing so. I wish he hadn't. We continued walking through the halls. By this time, we were hearing all kinds of noises echoing throughout the school. We heard footsteps, lockers opening and closing, and we heard loud crash noises that sounded as if something was being thrown. It seemed like the more we stayed in there, the weirder things would get. Charlie thought that if we split up, we'd be able to get more footage faster. "The more footage we get, the less time we'll spend in here," he claimed. Though I agreed with him, I didn't think it was worth it. Nonetheless, I found myself wandering the halls alone. "See anything weird yet, mate?" Charlie asked through the walkie-talkie. Thankfully, I wasn't hearing or seeing anything strange. I kept walking down the halls. My flashlight suddenly started flickering. The batteries were just put in there. There was no way it could have been dying, but it did, and I found myself alone in the dark. Or maybe I wasn't alone. "My bloody flashlight died," I said into my walkie. No reply. "Charlie, are you there?" Static. Nothing but static. I could hear someone trying to say something. "He's behind you," whispers from the walkie-talkie. I turned around, but I didn't see anything. I stood there in the dark, amazed I had yet to piss my pants. A minute or two later, I heard a scream that echoed through the halls. It was Charlie. I didn't know what to do. I screamed his name. I called to him over the walkie-talkie, but got no answer. I froze in fear, and I didn't move until I heard a voice echoing through the halls. It sounded as if they were far away, like on the other side of the school. "Steve, where are you?" "I'm over here," I yell. "I can't see shit, mate." I start walking, and then suddenly I was grabbed and pulled into the corner. I was screaming, tried to fight him off until I realized it was Charlie. "Don't do that, mate," I yelled. "I heard you calling him. Why didn't you answer back?" He had a strange look on his face. I could see in his eyes how terrified he was. "That wasn't me, mate," he said. "I never called you." We decided that the fame ratings or any of that stuff was no longer worth it. We replaced the batteries in our flashlights and walked back to the front entrance. We reached the entrance minutes later, but for some reason the door was locked. We kicked it, punched it, rammed it with our shoulders, but it would not open. We were trapped, and we realized there was probably no way out. Somebody or something didn't want us to leave, so we decided to stay put. We had our backs against the doors, and we didn't move. I was greatly regretting ever stepping foot in this damn school. I'm sure that Charlie was as well. I woke up about 30 minutes later. I must have dozed off. I looked around. Charlie wasn't anywhere in sight. "Charlie!" I yelled to my walkie-talkie. "Where the bloody hell are you?" No answer, just static. I stood up on my feet and noticed someone at the end of the hall. They were standing there, just about 50 feet away. "Charlie, is that you, mate?" I started to walk slowly toward whoever it was. I heard my pulse beating, echoing through the halls, my breath swiftly moving in and out of my mouth, my footsteps faintly touching the floor. As I got closer, I realized that it was not Charlie. I stood still, but I could still hear my pulse beating, my breath still moving swiftly in and out. He was just staring at me. He was probably staring at me the whole time I was asleep, the whole time I was slowly walking toward him. He was in some black janitor suit, and his face was pale with multiple stitches all over. His eyes were dark. I saw the evil within. His head was tilted sideways as he continued to stare. I didn't understand what it was I was looking at. I've never seen a spirit so real before. But he wasn't just a spirit, he was a demon. "Run!" Something from my walkie-talkie out, and it most certainly wasn't Charlie. I ran. I didn't know where I was running to. I just ran and didn't look back. I ran into a classroom on the other side of the school, and I locked the door, knowing that if whatever it was, a spirit, a locked door wouldn't stop it, but it made sense at the time. I stayed in there for about 10 minutes. It was dark, and I didn't know whether or not someone else was in the room with me. Steve, it's me." It was coming from my walkie-talkie. "Where the bloody hell are you, Charlie?" "I don't know. I woke up in some room." "What room? Where are you, mate?" I could hear him weeping through the walkie-talkie. "Steve, I'm scared," he cried. I started tearing up myself. I never heard him cry like that before. I'd known him since we were 14, and I'd never heard that. "It'll be okay, Charlie. We'll be okay," I cried, hoping I was right. He was weeping uncontrollably. I knew that something was wrong. "You don't understand, mate," he cried. Look to the right corner of the room. I lifted my flashlight. I didn't understand what the hell was going on. I pointed to the corner, and I literally froze in fear. I dropped the walkie-talkie on the floor. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't. He was dead. Charlie was dead. "I'm sorry, mate." That was the last time I ever spoke to him. I didn't understand how he died. There was no blood, no cuts, or anything. I guess he saw something that literally took his breath away. I didn't think about how I was clearly talking to him over my walkie-talkie, even though he was clearly dead. The only thing I thought about was my best friend of 20 years was gone, and I didn't know what to do next. I thought about it, and I realized it must have happened when we split up. His scream. I kept thinking about his scream. I lay there with his body, and I woke up hours later to the sun shining upon my face. I'd never been so happy to see the sun. I figured it was over. I pulled out my phone and was finally able to call the police. They arrived, and I was finally free of that school and whatever haunts it. I drove away, never looking back. The school needs to be burned down, and hopefully it can kill whatever lies within it. I can't go anywhere anymore without feeling I'm being watched. I was traumatized, and I still am. I saw what could never be unseen, and no matter how many hours of therapy I go through, I'll never be the same person I was before. I wonder if anyone's ever seen Charlie through the windows, or even heard his whispers as they walked by. If they had, I hope they weren't scared, because Charlie was a great guy. If you ever see him, tell him Steve said hi and that he misses him dearly. I don't think I will ever forget what happened in that school. I would never forget the sound of that bell. I would never forget the demonic voice of the thing that rings it. I could see him now, standing out on that bell tower, waiting for midnight and waiting for his next victim.